closed. There you go.
And I want to point out that the semester's over and Gareth is back. And Gareth is now officially, or almost officially, our co-I on this project since we got selected for NASA funding. So
Happy
Good,
to be
we'll have
back.
Yeah, we'll have to give him things to do now. That's the only bad part. All right, I thought we'd start off, I think, Nathan, you probably have an announcement that's relevant to the group, personnel-wise.
personnel-wise, which one? Which announcement?
Our
with
public,
Ed?
our
Yes,
PIO,
yes.
of course. Yep.
Yeah, there have been so many things going on. So yes, we have decided that it would be important to create a public information officer position. And we are very lucky to have someone with a lot of experience in amateur radio, public information, and also in public information in general, and that's Ed Afchek, WX2R. And so we have selected him to be our public information officer for this event. So
Your humble servant. Uh-oh, I see a lot of hands. There's a lot of pressure here now. So thank you.
congratulations, Ed.
Yeah, thanks. We'll step forward on it. So a lot to
Yeah.
do.
Definitely.
Yeah, you'll see on my list of things we need to accomplish between now and 2024. A lot of them will end up with your initials next to them. So look out.
It's just no different than work. So no worries.
No, we'll have a lot of fun doing it too. We already have that much we've
Sure
proven
have,
out. So.
Thanks, everybody.
What I wanted to do is just take a little brief recap of where we're at and where we're going, just to kind of recalibrate ourselves here. It's kind of the beginning of the summer season. You can see people are missing here and there. It's vacations and actually field days coming up. Nathaniel's got a lot of travel, so a lot of us will be in and out, but I thought it'd be worthwhile just doing a little recap of where we're at in case I'm missing something and that sort of thing. So let me share my screen a second. And hit play. So if you look at all the wonderful things we've done, and there's certainly a lot of them, as part of this group since last September, I think, when we started meeting at Thursdays at 4 p.m. Like I said, there are quite a few accomplishments, and there's a lot that's not on this list, but I'm thinking more specifically about our events under the Festivals of Eclipse Ionospheric Science. So we've got 2 contests, the SEQP 2.0 and the Gladstone Signal Spotting Challenge, well defined and documented. We're able to promote them. Another one that's been a little bit more recent is the TDOA Eclipse Research Event. I mean, I know this isn't the most technical call of the 3 that HAMSI is involved with at these events, but I wanted to kind of give that one a home at least because it's part of the festivals and I didn't want to get dropped out. So I wanted to mention that here. The Grape 1 and 2 similarly are really Case Western Reserve's responsibility, and those are handled pretty well on the Thursday morning call. But again, since we're promoting a lot of this stuff all together, I wanted to place those and make sure they're under the umbrella, and that's how they're presented on the website as well. I think we've done a fair amount of promotion for the festival so far. We've been getting our feet wet. There's our media hits on our webpage, but there's a fair number of YouTube videos and a couple of podcasts. The talks, I just recently added the Tapper talk that Nathaniel did at the Hamvention is at the bottom of the list. Contest University's there. We got some great publicity from places like NASA and Hackaday. And we were just, how should I say, kind of stumbling our way through this whole thing. And now we've got Ed to give us a little bit more professional direction. I expect we'll do well and get a lot more of this stuff going on. Of course, we have to mention the grants that have been awarded too. We wouldn't be able to do a lot of what we're going to accomplish without people like the NSF and NASA and people like Nathaniel and Gareth and others writing these proposals and getting them approved. So that's been a huge, huge accomplishment. And I think we've revitalized and kind of brought back to life HAMSI's social media presence with Mackenzie's help and some input from others too. So especially Facebook and of course Discord have been pretty active. She's been posting to both of those. And we've got the option using Twitter, and we've talked about YouTube and stuff in the future. But there's only so many hours in a day. So those, as I saw, are our main accomplishments for the festivals. Is there anything that anybody else wants to add that I might have missed? Okay, good. I'll move quickly to the goals. This is what I really wanted to cover. I mean, We've talked about getting Central and South American participation for our contests. Mackenzie's been working on that. She's got some really good ideas, put together a nice letter and a list of contest clubs, mostly south of the equator, that we could send some of this to. But she and I have been discussing the possibility of getting some of this stuff translated and whatnot. I did contact Angel, WP3R, about a week ago. I haven't heard back from him. So we'll see where that leads, if anywhere. We can't permit, we've still got a little bit of work to do, mostly on Bruce Horn's part for the contest log submission processes. Bruce said he'd be working on that stuff over the summer up and through August, which would be fine time-wise, but I didn't want to make sure that not forgotten. And when it comes to scoring our events, we've talked about the last few weeks, put together a kind of a scoring committee. Jay's working on a definitional document, so that's out in front of us. Again, as much of a placeholder as anything for the TDOA event, we've got to work on some post-event analysis resources, I guess would be the way to put it, on Steve's behalf.
Yeah, I can give.
And we're not done. I'm sorry.
Today. I can do a short update and present what I've written so far.
Okay. Yeah, I'll see if we got a lot going on. I'll see if I can get to that, Jay. That would be a good thing.
Yeah.
There's a couple of other events we're talking about. Nick is here today. He's written up some information on the AM IQ data collection, and I think that's got a lot of promise. And see if we tie that in with some Doppler analysis type work with Dartmouth too. A big thing, at least in my world, is making sure we've got the GRAPE 2 siting and deployment taken care of for our CEDAR grants. Of course, CWRU and the New England Grape Group, they call themselves, are doing most of that work. But I think that ties in with our promotion, the next bullet item, because as we talk about all these events, the grapes are part of those talks. As far as promotion goes, now that we have a PIO, there's a bunch of tasks that I know Ed's been actually working on some of these, and we've been talking about it, and there's probably things that'll still pop up. But so far as periodicals, we've got an article coming out in the League on the Air. I wrote one for QST, submitted it back on May 5th. I haven't heard back yet. I'm not sure if a month or 2 months is normal to hear back from Becky. I'm not quite sure, but at some point I'll have to ping her again, I suppose. Ron's got the article. Hopefully he's not here to ask, but hopefully he submitted that to CQ. And there's some chatter about some other periodicals like Scientific American and even IEEE Spectrum.
We've had some outreach on Scientific American, but sort of like an early stage right now. So.
Okay, that's good. So that's moving along. We've got a list, and there's no shortage of YouTubers and podcasters that would like to talk to us about what we're doing. So far as presentations at club meetings and field day, as Mackenzie brought up earlier, the standardized presentation deck is pretty well done. And there's the partner websites, the League, NASA Citizen Science, and that sort of thing. We can continue promoting to there. They'll pick up our content and pass it on.
Yep. And Gary, if I can mention, it did also come up last night at the ARLPR meeting, and we'll do a larger presentation in terms of what we need to do, probably with next month's meeting. So just came up briefly, just to make everyone aware of what we're going to be doing. So
good. One question for you, Nathaniel. We talked about it briefly, but I know you got a lot going on. Is Rachel and I would both like to design some work with Vicki and Royal Printing to design some graphics for the grape, because it seems like the websites, when we put this stuff out, they like to have a nice flashy splash graphic at the top regarding the project. Is that something you could initiate, or is summer a bad time to do that? Or
no, I think it'd be just fine. I think if you can probably send a Vicky an email and just CC me on it and tell her that this pertains to the NSF grant that I have, so that way she knows it's like officially part of the University of Scranton. So then I would think it would be okay.
Okay, if that'll work, I'll try that too.
Just CC me on it. If there's any questions, I'll say something, but she knows who you are now, and she knows that we're doing this.
Okay, that's good. I'll take care of that. And there's obviously traditional media outlets. Ed's worked up his pitch letter. That's done. It's kind of in our back pocket, and the social media stuff too. So there's a lot here. Good thing there's a lot of us and a lot of people that are volunteering and helping because we certainly got plenty of tasks. Is there anything anybody would like to add or I might have missed here or another direction that I might not have thought of?
I think one thing we should start adding, we are doing a tremendous amount for the social media and the preparation, getting the word out. I think we should start adding some goals for scientific tasks. You know, now that Gareth is back and I'm here, you know, we should make sure we keep that on the radar as well. Also, I did speak with some people at Contest University, and there is a network, a worldwide network of software-defined radios that may or may not be used to monitor certain large global contests for certain reasons. But certain people that said that that network that may or may not exist would be available, could potentially be available to us. And Dave Pasco, KM3T, who owns liveatc.com, I believe, he said he would also provide the bandwidth and the storage to hold all of the IQ recordings made during the solar eclipse QSO parties from this network that may or may not exist. And we could post those recordings, and then we could have like put out a challenge to the community to say, okay, here are these recordings from the solar eclipse QSO parties. What sort of analysis can you do with this? And then, you know, see what people come up with. We can have them presented at a future HAMSI workshop.
Okay, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I like the choice of words, may or may not exist.
The contest world in SA.
Yeah, I was right.
So this
It
is a
reminds me of,
temporary site? Sorry. Nick here, is this a temporary site you're talking about, Nathaniel, as opposed to Zenodo where?
It would be a
permanent?
temporary. I
Yeah.
think this would be a temporary site for now, so we would have to look in the future to figure out where to house it permanently. But
Ah.
I was able to get this this arrangement for now at no cost, and then once we know how much data we have, we can you know, work out some arrangement that, you know, whether it goes to Zenodo or some other long-term archive, see if there's a way we could do that.
Okay,
Yeah, the science goals is obviously pretty important. That's what we're here for. All this other stuff is just is frosting on the cake, so to speak. So
Well, you know, it all plays together. I mean, we have to remember there's a couple of things here. We have to remember HAMSI is about keeping the fun in ham radio as well. So all the fun in ham radio is super important here. And then the other part is if we don't have all the fun in ham radio in these events, we're not going to have any data for the science. So it really goes hand in hand.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was obviously a good bullet to add, the science goals for sure. Okay, is there anything else? Otherwise, I'll we'll put this thing away and try to check off all these boxes in the next few months. That's what we're about. All right.
I like it.
Okay, good. Thank you. Couple other things. We'll take a quick look at it as we do every week at our numbers real fast. Let's see where they're at here. Let's see. Our Google group grew a little bit. The Grape group grew a little. As did the Eclipse groups, where people are still joining up. A little bit more interest in the TDOA event. Pre-registration for the contests. And hosting the Grape 2 seems to actually be getting the most activity, which is good. But there's a lot more that we need to do there because we've got not nearly enough sites identified. We've got a lot of more work to do there, but we had some ideas on that this morning. So anyhow, at least we're going up slowly but surely.
Refresh my memory, what's GSSC?
The Gladstone Signal Spotting Challenge. That was for the people that are running Whisper, FST4W, or putting up, say, skimmer sites.
Thank you.
Yep, that's part of the contest. Part of our scoring this year too. All right. Jay, now'd be a good time. Why don't you give us a little update on your document since we're talking about the contest and scoring?
Let me open it up here. And if you could, let me get it open here. And then if you could pass me the ball or,
I think you should be able to take it with the green share screen button on.
okay. Yeah, with all the webinars I'm in, Microsoft Teams, Cisco WebEx, Zoom, gets a little confusing. All right. Okay, recording, view, share screen. There we go, share. All right, you guys see it?
Yep.
I do.
All right. And first is just usual, version history. We got the, table of contents, introduction, scope of the document. Basically, the scope of this document is what the software shall or shall not do. It does not mention how you're going to do it. That comes in separate things, the definitions, references, and then we should follow the software V model. Now, I put this in here because there may be some people out there that really aren't used to or don't really know much about the V model. So this is how it's done in the world, one of the major models that's used. And we're right up here with this document and this thing. So basically what happens is in the V model, you have, this is how you develop your software down through the left side. You get down to the coding phase, and then up here on this side is where you test. So as you can see, each item has an associated style of testing associated with it. Now, how much are we going to do? Who's going to do it? Is it, all of these things, that's all in the future. That's all TBD. What I wanted to do by putting this in here is to at least start some a datum point, a starting point for how we should try, if possible, to go about developing this stuff so that not only is it going to work correctly the way we want it to, but also can be reusable, and then we can give it off. It can be modular. You can pass it off to everybody else, and they're going to have some basic idea of what to do and what their goal is, what their deliverable is. So that was my purpose in mentioning that there at this point. Now I realize it's volunteer, and people have limited time, limited resources, limited number of people. I get it, but it's a starting point.
Hey, we lost some of your audio a bit.
Oh, are you getting me now? Is it?
No, well, you sound muffled. Did the microphone move away from your face, or did it switch microphones?
It's a headset microphone. Let me turn off the headset here and go to the internal microphone. Stand by one, please. Oh, you guys picking me up now?
Much better, thank you.
More gooder.
Okay, headset is QRT. All right. So now my organization is in things that this is, version 0.1. We got to have a naming convention here, but when somebody submits a file name, what are they going to do? How you just can't you got to have a file naming convention. So I specify that here. And I also specify that if once we receive it, if it's modified, then you have to modify the name. And how you do that. It's what the submitter has to do. These are some of the characteristics that the submitter that must be at a minimum, they must submit. They can't just throw it out here. We need to know this information. Now, the individual data items, we need to know if what the frequency or frequencies, singular or plural, is monitored. And if it's for a ham band only, then we just need 20 meters. But if it's for, radio state, some other station, then we need to know the frequency. Now, if the information, this is something we talked about that was on the TBD list, if it's in some other format other than ASCII or Cabrillo, what kind of format do we want? We need to specify that, because we want to try to avoid having 10 people using 20 different formats to submit their data. So that would just make things miserable for us. So we should try and come up with a standard or some kind of a document that says exactly what kind of format your raw data, IQ files, etc., and that has to be specified. There's a thing here, if multiple files are submitted, good. Then we get to rationality checking. Now, the purpose of this is what we're going to do, what we should do is when we get a raw data file, and this will be explained a little bit later down in this document here, is that when we get it, we archive the raw file as it is received. We don't touch it. And that becomes a read-only file forever. Then we have to do some rationality checking on it to make sure that the data, is it good data? Is it garbage data? We should come up with some way to determine that. And I'm just going to pick an arbitrary example here. If somebody gives a Maidenhead grid square location and it's in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, they're not on a ship, they're not on a plane, it's just in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Well, maybe that we should question whether that data should be used at all, or if there's something else. But we should have some way to make sure that whatever data we're going to use, that it's reasonable, that it's not something so totally bizarre that it messes up everything else. So now if a file fails rationality checking, we don't delete it. We just move it off to a separate archive. It's marked read-only. It's a failed file archive. It's a failed area where we can say, hey guys, we checked this file and that John Doe submitted. It's no good. We can't use it. We'll just save it. Maybe sometime in the future we can use it, maybe whatever, but we're just not going to throw it away. We also need information in the files of if the data is just monitored data or it's two-way QSO data. Maybe they're separate files. Maybe the person put them in one file. We need to be able to document that. We need to be able to determine that. There will be a master database, which you guys basically touched on here, that when a file is received, it gets time-stamped, it's marked read-only, and it's not altered in any way, shape, or form. Files that have passed rationality checking can continue. And as I just mentioned, files that have failed, they go into a separate file. To mitigate the loss of one file system, and you guys touched upon this briefly about where you're going to store this stuff, I propose that these files be stored, if possible, in two separate database systems to minimize the possibility that one of those systems goes bad for some reason or becomes unavailable. Doesn't matter the reason. It's no longer available. We don't lose all the data. And I just gave an example here of a secondary server. Primary server is at the University of Scranton, and the secondary is at New Jersey Institute of Technology. Gee, I wonder where I got those names from. And that they're separated by at least 100 miles. And the reason that's in there is because you want to minimize the chance of a tornado coming through. And oh yeah, it hit the primary site, and the secondary site was only a couple miles away, and it also got hit. So, or a flood or something else like that. There's no restriction on who may access the database. However, we want registration. When it comes to putting together the software, software optimization will not be used for the initial production versions. It can be used for later versions, but not until it has been shown, the initial version, the unoptimized, has been shown to meet all requirements by both testing and proven in use. I speak to this from personal example, from personal experience, because several years ago, I had to work on a project. I was working on the watchdog timer for an embedded application, and it just, the dog was coming out and constantly resetting the system. And it took several days to figure it out, but it wasn't the root software, it was the optimizer that was crashing it. So, and once we turned off the optimizer, everything worked fine, just the way it should. But we lost, several days of effort trying to figure that out. So that is why I put this one in here. Source code, we're going to use ASCII. And then the final one I have so far is in unvetted software. We're going to try and, I know people are going to try and use open source or things like that, but we should try and test or do something to, and not just grab, something from Acme open source software. You just don't know what's in it. So you got a cyber risk. You also got a performance risk. You don't really know all the ins and outs of what it will or won't do. And if you don't know the source, you really don't have any information. So let's try and minimize that. So those are the things that I have up to this date. I am completely open to any further comments, suggestions, ideas, of where we should go from here. But I hope, at least, it's my hope in doing this, that at least by doing this document, I've provided a starting point for how you're going to develop, how things are going to go in the future, and that we try to avoid spaghetti requirements, spaghetti specifications, and spaghetti code. So that's what I have.
Interesting. There's a lot of work you put into it, Jay. Thank you.
I
One of the
really,
things
one
we'll have to
comment,
figure out.
I want to really
Yeah.
endorse this, because a lot of these projects that I've been on, they start out, it's just a couple of people working. You have sort of this common vision of what you're trying to do. You make a lot of progress, and then it starts getting bigger, and you get more and more people involved, and that common vision that ties it all together is not there. And so you wind up with people going off in different directions. They have different assumptions about how things can go. They don't test the same way, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the whole thing just blows up and grinds to a halt. And the extra work at the beginning is what prevents that from happening about the 40% in, and will help this get over the hump. So
yeah,
good job.
And thank you very much. And I say that both professionally and very thankful personally. I personally thank you for those comments. And I agree with you, Ward, totally, because my background is automotive embedded software, where you've got a group of many tens of people, literally all over the world, whose English is their second language. And in some cases, you're not quite sure about their university education. Most of the time you are, but every now and then you got to question it. But you have that same, the problem you just outlined. And my thoughts in putting this together were to try and keep everybody moving in the same direction at the same time in somewhat of a coordinated manner, to include veteran software engineers, rookie software engineers, or people that, months from now just drop in and, where are they on the project? What, we just want them to do a little thing, or they volunteer just a little thing. Okay, here's something you can do, a bite-sized nugget that you can work on, and you know exactly what to do. You know what you have to do. Then you develop your specifications of how you're going to do it. Remember, this document did not say how you do it. It's a what you will do.
Yes.
So Nathaniel, you teach a lot of software. You're in your day job, you use a lot of software. You develop a lot of software, and you probably see your students at all over the place in terms of their software skills. And it has nothing to do with how smart they are or how motivated they are. They can be very smart, very meaningful, very well motivated. They want to do the right thing, and they're excellent students, but they just may not have that, they don't have the experience that you and I have. So is my goal in writing this that you can give this to your students and at least get them going in the right direction. You're muted, Nathaniel. Nathaniel, you're muted.
Thanks, sorry about that.
No
I
problem.
think it looks really good, Jay, and I really appreciate you putting all of that together. And I think, like Ward said, we really do need this sort of structure in order to make sure that as we build on this, things go in the right direction.
Okay, Nathaniel, I would like to distribute this. Who should how do I get this distributed to the gang, to the group, so that they can comment on this and add to it and make suggestions?
I think it would
And
go through
I will be
Gary.
say again?
You will be the what?
I'll be the master keeper of the document, but I am soliciting input from the whole team. I'm soliciting. So I would like to distribute it to the team and have the team comment on it.
I think the thing to do is I'll create a web page in the HamSci site for the, I guess for lack of a better term, the SEQP scoring committee. And for now, this will be the only thing that's up there. We'll put a paragraph explaining what it is. I'll put a link to the document, Jay, and then your email address will be there. We don't have to advertise it beyond this particular call, but that's probably the best way to do it.
Gary, should I email it? I'll email it to you.
Yep.
And your address is at arl.net?
Correct.
Alpha Foxtrot 8 Alpha.
Yep, that'll work.
QSL. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Jay. The interesting part will also be the fact that Bruce Horner has the site that will actually be accepting the logs. So we'll get some details from Bruce. For instance, typically if you submit a log and a day or two later you realize you made a mistake or there was an error or you found something, if you resubmit it, it typically wipes away the first one and you only get a single log. So with those kind of things will have to be figured out and see how they fit in with what you've got there.
All right. Oh, and Gary, remember last week or 2 weeks ago, we talked about, we need the file format for IQ data. We were going to discuss that.
Right.
Well,
Actually, that's kind of where I was going to go next.
Okay, QSL.
Yeah, one other thing, and then I was going to jump into that real quick. Before I forget, while we were talking about PR a little bit earlier, there are a couple upcoming events, pretty minor ones. I got asked to appear on the podcast next week, no big deal. Believe it or not, I got asked to speak virtually at the North Dakota ARL section meeting in July. I'll use our standard slide deck and that sort of thing, so that'll work out pretty well. The New England Convention in, is it Framingham, Massachusetts, about 20 miles northwest of Boston, is looking for a speaker to talk about what we're doing here. I'm leaving on vacation literally a few days later, so I'm not able to get to Boston and back and then also get on vacation. So just something to consider if there's somebody who would like to appear there, could speak on Hamside's behalf in late August. I think it's the 23rd, 24th, something like that. We can talk about that too. So that's kind of an open. I told them we didn't have anybody, but if that changes, I'm sure they would be glad to give us a
David
slot.
McGaw usually goes to that, right?
I'm afraid I'm not able to this year.
Okay.
I have double conflicted,
Oh, no.
unfortunately.
We also have
Okay.
representatives from the New England Grape Group. So one of them might be going.
That's a good point. We'll bring that up next Thursday morning.
And it looks like it's going to be both the New England and the Hudson division conventions. So
Yeah, that's correct.
stand
I
by,
believe
as they
it's in-
say.
I believe it's in Marlboro. It's right
Yeah.
next to Framingham.
Yeah, no longer Boxborough. It's Marlboro now.
Correct.
And yeah, but I mean, it should feel to all of us feel good that people are coming to us and asking us to contribute. I mean, that's a good feeling when you're asked
Yep.
to do that sort of thing. So as opposed to having to go out and push them. So that's a good thing. Nick is here and David's here from Dartmouth. Do we take a couple of minutes, since we were talking about science earlier, to talk about the AM data
Well,
collection?
Unfortunately, I need to get going to another event. So I'm afraid I don't have time to talk about it right now.
Okay. I
We
would like
certainly
to put
want
up,
to.
I'd like to put up what Nick has at least, so we can agree on that. We've got a direction on that, and we can certainly continue the discussion next week.
Yes, please.
Okay, that's what we'll do. Nick, do you want to share your document that you sent to me earlier today, or I've got a copy here I could find too, I'm sure.
Gary, on your topic list, you had a AM Doppler event, being new to everything on this end. Are you talking about the Doppler shift?
Yes, yes. Dartmouth does a lot of research in that area, so using
Yeah, we have an
AM
ongoing,
broadcast stations.
just to explain it, we have an ongoing project that we use the Doppler shift on AM carriers to
Okay.
look for TIDs in the ionosphere. And Nick has brought up that there are a number of, well, I guess medium wave listeners that might be able to contribute to the project. We'll have a dedicated network in the Eastern US, and then the others can be all over. But we do need to come up with a plan of corroboration and what data should look like.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
yeah.
because you're talking about, I thought you were talking about putting something on the website. Can I share the screen real quick?
Sure.
Well-
Do I have to shut this down? Let's see. Ah, crap.
But let's let Nick show what he's got, Gary, first, because we've been
Okay.
talking about this for a couple of weeks. We haven't made
Okay.
a lot of progress, so
Okay.
put together something pretty good here. So let's get through this first.
Okay, this is just the, what I sent to Gary because he was asking for something to put up on the website. Primarily, it's going through the project description, which is a variation of what I'd already put together to send out to the medium wave DXers. This project aims to establish data quality guidance so that SDR files recorded across America will not just contain DX, but will also qualify as scientific data. Then it goes on to participation. The fact that people will be using SDRs gives examples of some of the SDRs, and then gives guidance as to the best quality data using such receivers. And this we have also covered before, and also the talk that I gave at the workshop. Primarily making sure that we know exactly what you're using and how you're using it, using your normal antenna, but not changing things during the period of the eclipse. That timekeeping will be, accurate timekeeping will be absolutely necessary. As I was making this up, the one thing that came up was starting when, like how much recording are we going to do in terms of time relative to the maximum totality in the area. These recordings will be done in many places, and many of them will be, relatively far away from the actual maximum of totality. But at each location, there is a maximum totality. How far in advance do we want to start recording, and how far after totality do we want to finish recording? Also going on to what this is important to David, the warming up of the receiver for several hours, because some of these do drift with time when they're warming up, and we want to have a steady a frequency, strict frequency keeping as possible. But what we really want, if we're really worried about looking at Doppler, would be locking the SDR to a frequency standard. Some people have this already. Others might be thinking about it, and this might be the impetus to actually get going and do it. And then finally, whether we're going to put additional SDR recordings at sunrise and sunset as a comparison point. And the point that was made, and I think the GDOA site, was the fact that trial run recordings will be really, really helpful, because you don't want to make a mistake on the day itself. You want to, sort of have made all your mistakes before you start the recording on the eclipse day. There are various other things that I'm not sure about yet. Who to contact, whether we want people to register, and getting to join this particular Google group to do with the eclipse. These are things that I still need to actually put on. There's participation after the eclipse. And this is where I also talked about in the workshop, was that participants should be able to actually get a good idea of what the data looks like, what channels would be of primary interest, perhaps to researchers, and the possible software that could be used to do that. This would be something that could be done in advance, and also useful for finding DX in the listening. Then there's don't know about transferring files. We need to know about that, and how to plug further volunteering for help with ham-side data processing of interest. And finally, just a quick run of the science behind the project, pointing out that the ionosphere affects not just HF, but also medium frequencies, and we're the people to sort of gather that data. And the two objectives that an SDR that is not locked in frequency could be helpful. And what we're looking at here is actually the signal strength change. And then if we can get a locked SDR, with a stable clock, then Doppler shifts. And this would dovetail in with what David is doing, but I have to know what he's doing before I can sort of figure out exactly what that would be. And so I think that's it in a nutshell. Looking for suggestions, corrections, etc. So fire away.
Well, it looks pretty good to me, but I really do have to drop off.
Yeah, no, I
maybe we
understand.
can
I appreciate
talk
you
about
staying.
this on, yeah, maybe we can talk about this next week. I will have the same conflict, so maybe we put it earlier in the
Okay, Yeah,
Mhm.
that's good. And we can
Telecon.
also have some exchanges by email
Absolutely.
if you have something in mind. Okay,
Yep,
fire away.
very
Okay,
good.
thanks.
73 all.
All right, take
Bye
care,
now.
David.
I also think this looks very good. I think it's well thought out. I think working with Dartmouth and David McGaw in Dartmouth, I think is a really good idea on this.
Yeah,
I
my
think that's good.
understanding, sorry, my understanding from David is that they will be targeting particular broadcasters. And so,
Mhm.
you know, if we can sort of emphasize, you know, sort of getting people that would be able to add to his data collection, you know, that would be wonderful, but I have to know what he's targeting. Okay, back to
Absolutely.
you. Sorry, back to you, Nathaniel.
Oh,
Yeah,
no,
I think that
that's
this
good.
would also make a good candidate for posting.
Sorry.
I think that this would also be a good candidate for posting on the.
Yeah, yeah. The Gary wanted this from me because he wanted to add to the website about the Eclipse. So he, you know, eventually he's going to sort of webify it.
Yeah.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah, Gary, I sent you that document. It's in your email.
All right, good, Jay. Thank you.
Okay, sorry, we sort of cut you off, Nathaniel. Do you have other things to say on this?
No, I just thought it was very good.
Okay, much appreciated. Okay,
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the format Nick and I talked about it. You should work well on our website. If you'd like, I could create a simple Google form as I did on for the other projects, and we can start gathering interest. I mean, the interesting thing here to me is this is not just the amateur radio community. It's also the listening community. People may be licensed, they may be unlicensed. Either way, that's obviously perfectly fine. So we may kind of expand our audience a little bit. It's a nice opportunity to do that.
yeah, that's a good point. You know, that's you know, because of course, you know, citizen science is not exclusive to radio amateurs. I think many of the people who participate will be radio amateurs. They have a technical interest. They tend to get amateur radio licenses. But as far as the things, you know, like there's one scientific question is specifying this time that we would prefer people start recording and finish recording so that you get the, you know, the best look at the eclipse. Obviously, it can be longer than that, but do you have any take on that, Nathaniel? Is that something we can nail down now?
Well, you could time this to go at the same times as the solar eclipse QSO party, which I
Okay.
think we have. I think they're 12-hour events.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
12 hours in October, then 10 in April, I believe.
Okay.
And what that does is it gets it sees the atmosphere well before the eclipse starts and keeps looking at it a bit after the eclipse ends. So you should be able to get capture the full event.
Right. The one downside with doing it continuously is that there's going to be a large amount of data, even if you just do it for 2 hours. 12 hours is going to be immense. I'm thinking maybe we might want to be looking at, you know, sort of asking whether people can do it in chunks. But maybe we can discuss that further. It's just that 12 hours is going to be, I say, a lot of data. You know, if you do a
Right,
broadband recording.
And so of course that 12 hours covers, you know, all regions where the eclipse is before the eclipse comes on to where the eclipse comes off. If you look at any particular location, you know, there's going to be a time of partial eclipse starting at that point, a time of partial eclipse ending at that particular location. So you could tell a person, you know, look at your particular location, start recording an hour before partial eclipse and record up to an hour after partial eclipse. I think that would probably be the minimum amount of time where you could effectively see all the patterns.
Okay.
But I do think having a recording period that I think that 12-hour recording period covers things much better, and then that will also align well with what we're doing for the solar eclipse QSO party. Because one of the things that I'm hoping here is, right now we're still kind of, having these experiments all be separate. So you have, we're setting up, so you're doing your AM radio experiment, and that's separate from, say, the grape experiment, which is separate from the solar eclipse QSO party experiment. And, a lot of it's separate just because there's so much to think about all at the same time. This is, kind of how we can manage it. But I'm hoping that if we coordinate things as much as possible after all these events are done, there are some people who will be able to say, okay, how do things look across VLF, across AM, across HF, really do some of these cross-spectral analyses.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And so I think this is another good reason why I think at minimum, I think these experiments, if we can get them all to last the same 12 hours of the solar eclipse, that's best. Or that's what I would think would be the minimum. I think better would be doing like a total of 72 hours. So 24 hours before the eclipse, 24 hours around the eclipse, 24 hours after the eclipse. So you get like 3 days. So you get 2 control days and the eclipse day.
Yeah. Okay, that's definitely going to be something to think about.
Right.
Okay, I can
What
see
would
the
help is
ideal. Sorry. go ahead.
if we knew how many gigibytes that means. I mean, because to me, a
Yeah,
gigabyte is a lot.
yeah, I can calculate that, but it's
Yeah,
a lot.
that-
It's
that
a
would
lot of
help.
gigabytes. It would be a lot to ask of most people, just because that's far more than what they would do normally. But
Right.
yeah, as I say, it's a starting point, like an
Right.
ideal point.
But-
And that's good to have.
Yeah. Today you can buy 12 terabyte hard drives for
Oh, yeah.
$200.
Yeah,
So
no, I understand that. Yeah.
there's that. But then, how are we going to analyze all of this data afterward? And that's why I said with the with doing the wideband recording from the CQ Worldwide net, how do we analyze all of that? That's what I was suggesting, maybe put it up as a challenge to the community because it's just so much data.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the sort of, the visual processing, might be helpful in that case. But even there, I think that the processing software might choke it, doing it all at once.
Yeah.
At any rate, that goes far beyond what we're talking about right here.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's other things on the agenda today. So that would also include the sunset and sunrise on the day of the eclipse, perhaps in October. Yeah, it might possibly be certainly sunrise.
Yeah.
And then I guess these other ones I can discuss with Gary, because he's already done that with, I think, at least one of the other groups that he's got on the website. So. And then this whole thing about the transfer of files, which I guess you're still working on, and how to plug the volunteering to help. And that can be discussed a little further in the future. But I think that's something that should be included in this, because there's this concept that you're interested in getting, citizen scientists who are interested in the science, as opposed to just gathering data, giving them an into helping out. Okay, I think that's it, unless anybody else has anything else to say.
Rachel just reminded me that I have another telecon right at 5 regarding my Virginia Tech trip next week. So I'm going to have to say 73.
Okay.
And then I'll also have to say that, so I'm going to be traveling next week to Virginia Tech with students, and we're going to be doing an intensive week looking at super darn data. So I won't be on the telecons next week. That should not stop you from meeting. Is that good for you, Gary?
Yeah, next week is fine. The following week is field day, so that might be a problem, but next week's fine.
Okay, sounds great. Well, we'll talk about field day the week after that. We'll see where we are. Yeah, and it's also, anyway, that sounds great. So I'll say 73. And I will let Gary, you can have control of the meeting, okay?
Got it. Thank you. Take care,
Thank you.
Nathaniel.
Great, Nathaniel, take
Thanks.
care.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Okay. All right, now, why has this disappeared? Ah, there it is. Okay,
All right, I
Yep.
think that was very productive, Nick. One was a good document, two was a good discussion. So
okay, good. Yeah, I'm glad we got somewhere with it.
if you wouldn't mind, if you get some time, clarify your thoughts, add the notes and some thoughts about the times there and resend me that document, because that way I can think about getting it on the website. As I learned from Nathaniel, I typically tend to put things up there and not really tell anybody about them except maybe you and David. So maybe just the three of us will be aware of that page. And then when it's really in final form, then we can start linking it to elsewhere on the website and promoting it and so forth. But
Okay, it'll be somewhat dependent upon, I presume you're going to try and get something from David as well, in order to have something up on the website also, because otherwise I'll have to pull out my link, that it doesn't exist. I said I would link to his project, but there isn't anything to link to right now.
yeah, you're right. Maybe it's best to wait till next Thursday. I've got plenty of other things to do ham-side related between now and then. So
Yeah, and I mean, even if it turns out that he says, well, I won't have anything for another couple of weeks yet, I mean, we'll have to post something which doesn't have the link in it, and that sentence, because it's easy to modify, presumably after it's been put up. Is that correct?
yeah, oh yeah, it's very easy to update. That's not a problem.
Okay.
I just want to put my engineering manager's hat on and say the sooner we get it defined, the sooner we can promote it and start gathering responses. But obviously,
no,
there's a balance that has to be struck. So
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I'm just saying that, we might be able to still get it up with a couple of details that aren't quite complete.
Right.
But I agree also that I hate leaving a job sort of almost finished. It'd be nice to just get it out of the way and say it's there. Okay,
yeah,
back to you.
that's good. Gary, you had a comment before we close off tonight?
Yeah, but I think it got blown away. I had made a definition for a few field days ago, because I was running the FM satellite, and let's see if but I was thinking on your definition that you wanted something short for the website, a definition of what Doppler shift was. So basically that's what I had written up and what I had used, and I just printed it out. And it was a lot easier when people were coming up and asking, you got your Yagi antenna, the Arrow 2, and you're chasing down satellites, how are you adjusting for frequency? Do you do that or not? So I just had a sheet of paper I gave them. And because I was trying to catch satellites. I don't know if I was on the right track when I saw the definition for publicized on the website. But that's what I had written, just a short one.
Well, if you don't mind, if you could email that thing to me, I'll tell you why. Because one of my lower priority tasks is to get the ham-sci glossary of terms up and going.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's better to refer to a well-known site that's actually done the work just as a link. And sometimes it's better to put our own words into place. So I wouldn't mind taking a look at this and considering this, or at least parts of this, for our glossary.
Yeah, because it's just a short version, so they can read it and get the general idea of what it is that Doppler shift was.
Okay, yeah, please, if you send that to me, I can consider linking that and putting it in our glossary. So that's helpful.
Okay. Will do.
All right, well, I think we did accomplish quite a bit. Is there anything else that everybody wants to cover before we get done tonight? Okay, that's good for another week. Everyone have a good week.
So
Get on the
far, so
radio, get
good.
on the air. Get out and get some fresh air. Summer.
Thank you all.
Beware
At
the
first,
smoke
only
of the Northeast.
that means mow the yard here, so.
Beware the smoke in the Northeast. We're getting hit pretty hard here right now, or later tonight in Kentucky, Canada.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate situation for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
See you guys.
All right, everyone. Have a good week.
73.
73.
Bye, everybody.
7-3, everybody.